So you want to see a really cute thing. Okay, first of all, Christians have this funny idea of what evolution is. They think that a fossil, a transitional fossil, is something that's half kangaroo and half beaver. You know, something that's one animal turning into another animal completely. That's what they think a transitional fossil is. Well, here's a living creature that I'm going to use to demonstrate what I think is an example of a transitional fossil. Of course, he's alive. See this little guy? Yeah. This is a black-plated, African black-plated lizard. Yeah. And I just want to call to your attention the snake-like head kind of looks a little bit snaky, but what's even more amazing is look at these little legs. Look at these little legs. You can really see it on the back legs. Come here, buddy. Look at these little legs. These little legs are like so little. They're so little. They're just little tiny things. They're like so tiny when you think about the size of my iguana's legs. Little tiny legs. Little tiny legs. Great big long body. Little tiny legs, right? And skinks are even less. I think skinks have actually no legs at all. I think they're lizards without legs, or they're just really tiny legs. But these guys are kind of a little bit longer than skinks, but still you can see the little tiny legs. Now what is evolution? Evolution is in 1,000 years you look at this same animal, black-plated African lizard. Of course, by then probably there will be no humans around to even know. But 1,000 years from now, the legs might be even littler yet. 1,000 years from now, I'm thinking probably he'll still have legs. This species, if there are even any on the planet, because the way it's going, probably there won't be any animals alive on the planet other than humans. And which animals we determine have a right to, well, benefit humans somehow. Everything else will be gone in 1,000 years. But yeah, imagining, let's say 1,000 years his legs will probably be a little bit shorter, a little bit smaller. Okay, how about 10,000 years from now? 10,000 years is enough time for there to be significant change. In 10,000 years, this little guy might not have legs at all. He might be more like the skink. He will have little nubs, or he'll have nothing at all. He'll just be a lizard without legs, which is, I believe, what skinks are. Not a snake. He's not a snake. He's a lizard. But he will look a lot like a snake. He won't have any legs because these little legs, you know, when you see these guys move, they move kind of like a snake too. They thrash and wiggle, and they use the strength of their bodies to propel them more than their little legs. So that's what evolution is. It's not a creature turning into another creature entirely. It's the same animal changing gradually as its environment changes. Changing over time. He'll always be a black-plated African lizard, but he might look different. See the armor on his back? He's got armor. Yeah. Maybe one day he won't need the armor anymore. Maybe conditions will change, and that this armor will eventually become less and less and less, but it'll always be this same animal. So anyway, just wanted to do a little visual demonstration of what change over time is, and no, it's not a chicken turning into a frog. Christian writes, I hate it when atheists use historical atrocities to discount the existence of God. Life isn't fair. Deal with it. And yet we're going to praise God, and we're going to give God the glory when one person out of 100,000 people manages to survive a calamity. We're going to give God the credit, but for those 100,000 people that died, you're not allowed to criticize God. You're just going to have to. We're just going to say, life isn't fair. Deal with it. Yeah, right. So God gets the glory when the one person manages to, out of sheer will, human grit, pull himself out of peril and survive. God gets the credit for that. But when the 100,000 people perish because God won't get off his lazy ass and try to help them. Oh, well, I hate it when atheists blame God. Life isn't fair. Deal with it. Sorry. Christian writes, I'm sorry, but I don't worship a piece of wood. I worship what it represents. Yeah, that's so different from the guys who used to dance around the bull statues. Christians like to turn the tables and say that belief in science is a religion. Belief that evolution is true is a religion, and that it requires faith. To be convinced by evidence to the point where you think that it's probably the way it really happened, you know, because the evidence supports this theory that this is likely how it really happened. Christians like to say, well, that's the same thing as having faith. Yeah, same thing as believing without any evidence whatsoever, just because a book says. Well, for science to be a religion and for it to require faith, basically we wouldn't require any evidence at all. We wouldn't require that scientists go out and study and scour the earth for their evidence, do science, to test, confirm and verify and retest and challenge each other, and you know, we wouldn't require that science did any of that. We would just sit back and have faith that it was just all true based on something that somebody wrote. You know, if being convinced by science that something that science theorizes is true, if all it required was faith, and, you know, basically making it the same as religion, then there wouldn't need to be any scientists. All it would require is that somebody wrote a sentence on a piece of paper. That would be it. And everybody would just have to have faith that that sentence on that piece of paper was true. And the guy who wrote the sentence is just somehow inspired by some deity. You know, Charles Darwin was the deity. He wrote a sentence. We all just have faith that it's true. We don't really need scientists to be doing all the work that they do to compile all this evidence that they have. We don't need that. You know, if it's true that evolution and or science in general is just a religion and that we're just religious, you know, because we are convinced by the evidence that science presents. You know, if it's religion, we wouldn't even need the evidence. We wouldn't need the convincing. We would just have faith that it was true. So I don't understand how Christianity can try to turn the tables and say that people who are convinced by the evidence of science are religious, or that it's just the same thing as blindly following something that's written in a book and believing it hook, line, and sinker based on no evidence at all, and nobody out there trying to find the evidence at all, you know? I mean, to me it's like, you don't even have the right to compare yourself with people who require evidence. You don't require evidence. And it's just, I think it's pathetic to try to lower people to your level, you know? You can't rise to their level, so you try to lower them to yours and say, well, you're the same as me. You don't, it's just a church. You just believe in a religion. It's called evolution. It's just science is just a religion. You try to put us on your level. I'm sorry, but I and a lot of people, I used to be the kind that could just believe because a book says, or because somebody had a very convincing way of talking, so it must be true. I used to be just like that. Now I don't. I mean, I really don't. I need evidence. I need something to convince me. And science does convince me. The evidence that I have read, and I have only scraped the surface of the evidence that is there to study and read about. Just the little bit that I have read has convinced me that these theories are likely true, that this is likely a very acceptable, plausible explanation for natural events. But when I look for the evidence to support any of the old beliefs that I had, the Bible, Christianity, Adam and Eve, Jesus, whether he even existed at all. There is no evidence whatsoever at all. It's purely on hearsay. What a book says. What a cult that is founded on what this book says. And I'm sorry, no evidence. Nothing to convince. These two things cannot even be compared to each other. And religion doesn't even remotely try to rise to the level that science is at by looking for evidence to prove itself true. Doesn't even try. So I'm sorry, you can't say that it's the same thing. I'm sorry. Science are people looking for answers. People who believe in science are people who have been convinced by the evidence those people have gathered. No religion required, no faith required.